Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Brian from Breaking Down Security. I'd also like to welcome you if you're a new listener to this show. We just got back from Derbycon, so this podcast is going to be discussing, Derbycon experience with some of the attendees, and I say some being two. I was having so much fun, and Mr. Betcher and Ms. Berlin were having so much fun with the doing their respective bits. Mr. Betcher had a table, an IMF security table, talking about his LogMD product at Derby. Ms. Berlin, of course, was doing the wildly successful mental health village at Derbycon this year, which earned her a black badge, among other things that she's done for the community. But I really think the mental health village really cinched the black badge. So next week we'll be back at full strength. It'll be me, Miss Berlin, Mr. Betcher talking about what took place at Derby. We'll have a little post-Derby conference to discuss, what we enjoyed about the conference, what we didn't maybe so much enjoy about the conference, and we'll have some news and have some good topic of conversation. If you're new to the podcast, we have 247 episodes you can catch up on. Ms. Berlin joined us over a year ago, so in January 2017, so you can feel free to check out her episodes and all the other ones we've done previously with just me and Mr. Betcher, so please check those out. We also have a separate podcast Mr. Betcher and Michael Goff do, which is called Breaking Down Incident Response. They're on their 8th episode of that. It's a monthly podcast, so if you're interested in learning about all things incident response, and they stress that they're not a digital forensics podcast, so they're all incident response all the time. So you can check them out at in the show notes. There's a link in the show notes. So I'm going to be out for a couple of weeks, but we're going to try to have as many podcasts as we can during the 2 weeks that's going on. So please feel free to listen in, join our Slack if you'd like. You can DM us at Brakesec on Twitter, or send us an email to bds.podcast at gmail.com, and we will get you in on that. So the first person you're going to hear is, I've got his name here because I've got the schedule from Derby, Tomasz Tutzel. Oh, man. I ruined that, I know. He says it again in the podcast, and I was... the audio that we're doing right now happened Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time in Louisville, which was at the same time the ice cream floats and the root beer floats were going on at the IMF table. Miss Hacks for Pancakes has started that tradition at Derby, so... that was going on in the background. As you can hear, the hall noise was kind of noisy in this case. So we talk about his talk, which hadn't happened yet. He actually spoke Sunday at noon, and it was talking about detecting hypervisor introspection from unprivileged guests. Let me see if I can find the synopsis for that. Let's see. Saturday stable talks. Sunday full talks. Here we go. All right. So it's 11:50. He spoke at noon. Who watches the watchers? So he says, over the last decade, we've seen a rapid rise in virtualization-based tools in which a hypervisor has been used to gain insight into the runtime execution of a system. In earlier days, using virtualization for such introspection has only been thought of as a technique to develop stealthy rootkits. Today, there are a wide variety of security products using these techniques for services that include, for example, intrusion detection or malware analysis. So it's a fairly long synopsis, but he definitely has a lot of interesting things to say about it, and maybe we'll have him back on in the near future to discuss this more in depth. So our second audio is Miss AC Biswas, Cheryl Biswas. We've had her on the show with the Mainframe podcast when we had Soldier of Fortran and Big Indian Smalls on. She came on and talked about some mainframe security because she's a student of mainframe security, and we talked to her about her 2 talks. She gave 2 talks on Stable Talk on Sunday was at 9 a.m. Patching, Show Me Where It Hurts. And then she gave another talk Draw a Bigger Circle, InfoSec Evolves. She did that Friday at 5:50. So we're going to talk a little bit about her stable talk. We're going to talk a little bit about the talks that she gave her track talk, which was talking about new attack methods and IoT nightmares as we drown in data. She said, how do we as a community evolve to find the people we need to grow into the future? This talk explores our extraordinary strengths as a community and how InfoSec needs to grow forward to address the challenges ahead. So exploring existing mindsets and open the door to unconventional backgrounds. So she also talked about imposter syndrome and elitism being two sides of the same coin, and what are the definitive benefits we derive as members of this collective. So really great talk. There was a lot of talks very similar at the Mental Health Village, Drawing a Bigger Circle, talking about imposter syndrome, how we can take care of ourselves mentally, finding, in many cases, a lot of us, often don't get help from people, and it could be very well useful for us to find people that can help us. So one of the talks was about how to find a good therapist, for instance. Miss Biswas has a lot of great things to talk about with regards to building a better community. So if you didn't see that talk, all of the talks, I believe, with the exception of a few, were on Iron Geek's website. I'll try to find the links for those. At least these two of those people that I had got audio from. So please sit back, enjoy. The audio from Miss Biswas is a lot nicer because I think we got that Sunday morning when we were breaking down the Mental Health Village. So there wasn't a lot of audio. So we got a little quieter place for that. So I am out for the week, and next week Miss Berlin, Mr. Betcher, and I will be back at full strength, and we'll talk about what we enjoyed about Derbycon. So sit back, enjoy, and let the sounds invade your earbuds, and talk to you next week. Okay, so this is Brian at Derbycon. I'm talking to
Tomasz Tuzel.
Thomas who?
Tomasz Tuzel.
Tuzel, okay. All right, so you're speaking tomorrow, Sunday. This is Saturday at Derby. What are you going to be speaking about?
So we developed a technique to determine if a hypervisor is introspecting on a guest, so without any special privileges. So for example, on a Google Cloud or AWS or something, you can launch the tool and determine if it's doing something inappropriate to your guest instance.
Okay. And wow, that's quite technical. What made you decide to start doing this research?
It was actually someone else who came up with the idea. I just sort of picked up the work and did it myself. Well, not myself in the sense that he passed it off to us, and then we had a few other people working on the project. Okay. So it was just sort of handed to me.
Right on. So what did you guys find out in your research?
Well, there's a few ways you can determine whether or not the hypervisor is, if the hypervisor is like a hardware hypervisor. You can determine if, for example, it's trapping on certain instructions that the hardware supports, as well as determining if it's introspecting on certain portions of memory, so like an active intercession. So, for example, if you wanted to, like, say, trap on a very specific access in memory somewhere, like you say, I want to trap on this address or something, we can determine whether or not the hypervisor is doing that, because there's a whole world switch that happens. So there's a huge spike in timing and overhead, so we can time that difference using a few different techniques that the hypervisor would have a hard time manipulating to make it look like it's false. And then we can see how much work is happening roughly, the fact that it's happening in the first place, and we can do that for like active intercession as well as like a passive mapping. So if you think about a hypervisor not actually trapping an active access, but like mapping in the memory to a different into its own memory region, like into its own privileged guest, right? Then you can, because the hypervisor can do it on the back end, right? So it can just map in the physical pages to its own a separate context. So in that case, there wouldn't be like an active intercession, right? It wouldn't be specifically trapping on like on the specific memory access. It would just have continuous ability to monitor it from the physical pages, as opposed to having to wait for like a virtual memory to access it and do the whole translation and the trapping. So we found a way to do that too through like cache timing or techniques. So that's basically in the gist of how it works. We also looked into like non-temporal memory accesses, which basically means like it doesn't touch the cache. So remember when I was talking about like a passive mapping, that's based on the cache timing technique. So if it doesn't touch the cache, you can't use the cache timing technique. Right. So we looked a little bit into that, but didn't develop out full sensors for it. Okay. Yeah, that's basically the gist of it. And then we looked into a few other technologies that would either make it easier or make it harder to detect this kind of thing in the future.
Okay, and what type of adversary is using this kind of tool?
Well, we don't really know if an adversary is using it yet. The idea was to see if they're doing this kind of thing in the first place. But like the idea is you don't really, like, let's say you don't trust your cloud provider, which maybe you shouldn't.
Right.
Maybe you should. I don't know. Make your own decision. But we were looking into it for just people that were interested in like high risk data and just wanted to have a better idea of like, can we see what our systems are doing?
Right.
Yeah, that's basically it. So yeah, we haven't actually seen any like full-on attacks in the wild, but then again, we kind of did this as an R&D project. Not like it's not a full development thing. So we like open sourced it.
Okay. So what are some ways to mitigate your proof of concept? Could you use like encrypted instances if it was in Amazon or what?
So when you say mitigate it, you mean like prevent us from detecting it?
Or, prevent it from being used for nefarious purposes?
Well, it's mostly meant as a defensive thing, so I guess you couldn't really use it as a defensive thing, I guess. There might be some side channels you could use to attack adjacent guests, but if you want it to be like an evil hypervisor, you could generate noise, but the thing is that it's like side channel. It's a side channel, we're using a lot of side channel techniques, so you can't really just like, you can't really just turn them off, right? You can turn off certain capabilities on the hypervisor, but then you lose those capabilities to your guest, and the user experience would degrade and that kind of thing. So you could generate noise, but again, that would slow down your systems. Right. That would make things harder to.
And all hypervisors have this capability in them, or is there any
for us to use the detection?
Right.
Yeah. So it's hypervisor agnostic, right? So we don't need to do it on anything specifically. We did this with Zen because Zen is open source. So we needed to actually make a hypervisor that does evil things. Okay. So we had to code it in ourselves.
Right.
Because there's no like off the shelf like here's your evil hypervisor. Right. .com, but you can. So it's specific to the CPU itself, right? It's like Intel's architecture supports doing this kind of thing.
Right.
As long as it has the basic core features. Some instructions aren't there. Some instructions are there, but the core features that we need exist on your modern CPU.
You're saying that this could be used by evil hypervisors. That would mean you'd have to subvert the existing hypervisor in the environment, or
either the hypervisor could be the provider could just be spying on you, or or somebody subverted the hypervisor. Yeah.
Okay.
One of those two things.
Cool. So I know that Amazon has gone away from Zen and has created their own hypervisor.
They went to KVM, I think.
Yeah. Oh, it's a KVM like variant or something?
I think so. I just remember last November they said they're going to shift to KVM.
Okay.
That's what they said. I don't know how far along they are with that.
Right. I did. How many hypervisors did you test this on?
We just tested on Zen, but we tested on a bunch of different machines.
Right.
So again, it's not really specific to Zen. We're just dealing with instructions. We're dealing with CPU caches, that sort of thing.
It's hypervisor agnostic. Is it also OS agnostic, or is there any kind of protections in the OSs?
We wrote it for Linux, and we wrote it with really like the bare minimum requirements. So you really shouldn't even need to install any packages on your Linux box. Just boot up a straight Ubuntu instance or something, and it should just run.
Okay.
Well, you need run make and then run it.
Right.
But then, so it doesn't work for Windows, but it wouldn't be that hard to retrofit for Windows because the same instructions are available to Windows as well.
All right. And you said high security data kind of stuff. Are you thinking of military applications for this, or like people are worried about losing health information, or?
Yeah, it could be military, it could be anything. We're getting a picture taken, by the way.
Right.
But it's just whatever you're sensitive about. Some people are just paranoid about everything, right?
Right.
Some people have a big red button that they hit, and then it'll just cleans their whole hardware.
Yeah, it does depend on your threat model.
Yeah.
But has this always been in hypervisors?
The capability to do this?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's part of the architecture. You're talking about the detection mechanism?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're using like a standard tick timer. So are you familiar with TSC, the timestamp counter?
I do not.
Okay, the timestamp counter is like a very high resolution timer that basically like each cycle is counted on your CPU, so it's fast.
Right.
And it basically counts the amount of ticks since your CPU is booted, and so you can use that for like timing. Just just using it for like timing, like how long something takes. But it's easy to manipulate. Like a hypervisor will trap and change it around a lot of times because think about like a guest. It can't serve all the guests at the same time, so it needs to like pause it and unpause it, and so it needs to change the TSC every once in a while.
Okay.
But there are timers that you can't manipulate as easily, called like the HPET, which is a high precision event timer, and that's used for like multimedia, like audio and video and graphics on your OS.
Right, like real time stuff.
So if you change those timers around, you're not going to see you're going to have like jumps around your audio and your video and whatever else. So it's going to be kind of obvious something's going on.
Right.
So we can use those two timers in conjunction to see if there's something going on. The other timer technique we use is thread racing. So like if you can basically have like 2 cores and pin thread to each core and run like a bunch of knobs, say for example on one side, and then run your other instructions on the other side and just time the two and see how many knobs run before it's over, and then kind of correlate the two. So you take your wall timer and your thread racing timer, and you can see like are they similar, and you have some redundancy between how long each side takes, and you can kind of see like, okay, well, something's going on in either side. But I mean, you're right, obviously like multi-core, being able to run threads is an inherent CPU feature.
Right.
Everybody can run threads. The timer exists because it has to exist, otherwise things wouldn't work.
Right.
So, and they're all used for legitimate purposes, but they can also be used for illegitimate purposes. So.
Cool. All right. So, is this your first time speaking at Derby?
Yeah, well, the first time ever being at Derby.
Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I got one finger to...
There you go. It's the middle finger. It's cool. Yeah.
No offense.
Nah, that's all right.
I've actually never been to Derby before. It was kind of funny because they accept the papers after all the tickets were sold out.
Oh.
So you can't. So I mean, I sort of submitted the paper and then didn't give it too much thought. Then of course you get a comp ticket if you speak, but
That's cool. Right on.
So it's all good.
Any other talks you've seen?
We just. Well, I'm already forgetting all of them already. What was the last one? I went to a couple. There was a Mac OS one about nefarious apps, and then we were in a money laundering one, and then I'm forgetting the rest of them now.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you've been really playing. This is the first year they've been in the Marriott. I went 2-3 years ago. The Hyatt was nice, but this seems like there's a lot more room. So
Yeah. Well, I've still noticed it's really crowded here. Like most of the conferences I've been to don't have these kind of lines at the door to a lot of these talks.
Get used to the lines at the door. Even at the Hyatt, they had the lines were actually worse.
I'm used to it.
So yeah. So you work with this gentleman?
Yep.
Introduce yourself to the world.
I don't know, Brody Davis.
Yeah.
We just briefly worked together on a project recently.
Okay. And you've seen all the same talks he did?
No, I've been going to a couple other stuff. I just happened to run into him at the top of the stairs this morning.
Oh, nice. Okay, so did you know he was going to be here?
Yeah, I knew he was going to be here. We just hadn't met up yet.
Right on.
Yeah.
So have you been to Derby before?
No, this is also my first time.
Fantastic. Welcome. I always like to shake people's hands if it's the first time. Cool. So what have you thought about the Derbycon experience? Is there anything you've enjoyed so far?
I've enjoyed the entire conference.
Did you see Vanilla Ice?
I did.
Oh, before or after he came out for his encore? Because I heard he came in and started early, and then by the time most people got here, it was like, oh, he's on his first encore.
I'm not sure. I got here a little bit later, but I don't know. I think when we left, he was done.
Right on. Yeah, I didn't bring earplugs, so I couldn't go, and I watch Vanilla Ice on HGTV, so it's kind of a thing. All right, well, cool. How would people get a hold of you if they wanted to talk more about the hypervisor stuff?
Well, I guess you could look me up on LinkedIn or email me or something.
You're not on the Twitters?
I'm not on Twitter. I've been told I should get on Twitter, but then I have to create a Twitter account that starts out with 0 followers, and I have to build up the followers, don't I?
Okay.
So I haven't done that. I probably should, but I figure if someone really wants to find me, they'll check LinkedIn.
Right on.
So.
Okay. All right. So it's the final days, final hours of Derbycon, and I've been trying to get a hold of Miss Cheryl Biswas. Biswas?
That's right. Biswas.
Right. See, people who listen to the show know I like to murder names, period. So you gave 2 talks this year.
I know. This is my first Derby. I am still kind of coasting on the disbelief.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It was awesome.
So you gave your stable talk this morning, Sunday at 9 a.m. What was that one about?
So this one was my talk on patching.
Patching?
Yeah.
Okay.
Show me where it hurts.
Right on.
Yeah. And because we all have common pain points when it comes to patching.
Yeah.
This was it's known as my dumpster fire talk because every slide features a dumpster fire.
Oh my.
Because, it's patching.
Yeah. So what's the dumpster fire about patching? I mean, I've worked in vulnerability management, so I have my own stories about dumpster fires, but
It's largely around why we can't get people to do it, or
Right.
when we do it, we can't seem to get it right.
right.
And it was suffering through things like Spectre and Meltdown,
Mm-hmm. Right.
going through not just a bad day, but perhaps a bad year for certain vendors, and seeing when they do put out patches, the patches are bad.
Right.
And they have to put out another iteration. It was talking about the issues around WannaCry, and why are major institutions like hospitals so far behind, and helping people understand the awareness around. We don't know all about all of the different organizations and their requirements.
Right.
And brokering an exchange, brokering awareness around what do you need and why do you have to do this way, and how could we work with you better to make sure that security happens.
Right.
There were good discussions around mitigations. Do you actually have mitigations in place, because things are going to go wrong?
Right.
Have you tested your mitigations? Have you tested your backups? The things that you take for granted, or you just sort of poo-poo, that we actually could be doing better than we are, that would make a really big difference.
Yeah.
And then looking ahead to the future, because we know that if there are going to be 20 years in the making splendors like Spectre and Meltdown, there's going to be more of that to come. But we didn't know then, we're discovering now.
Yeah. So for compliance frameworks that say, oh, you must patch within a certain amount of time, and you've got hospitals, like you said, they're like, we can't patch in that amount of time. Is it because that the people who are making the compliance requirements and the people who actually have to implement them are not talking when these frameworks are being made to have a realistic kind of timeline for these items when they're having to patch?
You got to wonder.
Right.
Sometimes it seems like literally the left hand does not know what the right hand is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And from understanding now from a governance perspective and having worked on security audits, the enterprises drive how they want to put in the patches based on their business needs, requirements, stakeholders involved, and of course, downtime, because it's a dollars and cents approach. For the people who actually have to put in the patches and roll it out, they know that their time requirements are often far, far greater than what enterprise is willing or able to offer. They may not have an actual testing environment. They don't get to get the buy-in from stakeholders can be a very lengthy, circuitous approach. And instead of having, say you were supposed to do it on a quarterly basis, you may only do it twice a year, because that's how it works out.
Okay. Yep. So stable talks are 20 minutes?
25 minutes?
25 minutes. That's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
So your track talk, which was on Friday?
It was on Friday afternoon.
Friday.
Yes.
What was that one about?
So that was about our infosec community, and I was so excited to actually get to give this talk. And the theme for Derby this year is evolution. So I tailored mine to be about infosec evolves, which we are as a community. We're growing. We're getting more people joining us. We're looking at how do we expand our entrance capacity. How do we invite people who are non-traditional backgrounds in, learn how to work with them, train them up, and reap the benefit of their knowledge and experience to, I would say, from a threat intel perspective, broaden our scope.
Right.
So that we actually get to see so much more of that threat landscape and have a new understanding around it. So there's other ways that, InfoSec evolves in terms of threats, adversaries, technology, artificial intelligence, and big data are going to be huge in terms of what we can do. We have access now to this incredible pool of information. It's no longer going to be something that we can manage from a person perspective. We talk about automation, but this is going to raise that bar on how we use automation to an all new level. We can do that. It's appreciating what artificial intelligence can do for us, and being very realistic about what we are asking it to do for us.
So what were did you propose any solutions in your talk?
It comes down to be good to each other and be good to yourself. I talked about imposter syndrome, and I wanted people to understand you are good enough. You truly are. You are here, you learn, you try, and you share your knowledge.
Right.
I talked about collaboration. Collaboration is going to be the game changer for everybody, based on what we're seeing in terms of takedowns in Europe between Interpol, Europol, and working with the financial community and bringing down major figures within organized cybercrime. We know we can learn from these lessons. We can share internally with each other, break down the silos, and understand what the people within our organization are doing who are adjacent to us, and learn with each other. We don't need to know how to do their jobs. We can't learn all the things as much as I would like to, but the fact is we need to know how to do our stuff well, but open up and see what else is around us, and most importantly, understand how it all fits together. It's like linking blocks.
Sure.
It's a chain, and we're part of a much bigger picture. And when we understand that bigger picture, we really harness the ability to work as a collective. I love something that Hacks for Pancakes said. She gave a keynote a couple years back, and she said, together we could build a plane. And it's true, because all of us know something, but together as a community, it's that synergy. We are far greater than the sum of our parts.
Okay, so we can all build a plane together, but will it fly?
Well, my confidence in us as a group is that it will fly better than we even expect it will.
So it sounds like you could have given some of this talk at the Wellness Village, especially with imposter syndrome. That was several of the talks that we heard about here.
Yeah.
Is the term imposter syndrome correct, though? Imposter would mean like you're a fraud, right? I mean, it's trust issues, what it boils down to, you know.
It is. I certainly know I suffer from it because I came from a non-traditional background. And I often, in my early days, I expected at any moment to be called out because I didn't have a computer science degree.
Right.
Because
right.
I didn't do Linux. I hadn't yet really used Kali. You know, I'd never configured a firewall.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. These kinds of things. And you pick on yourself because you can't do this, this, and this.
Right.
I had to learn what it was I could do and discover by actually delivering the goods. I can do threat intel. I am an analyst. I'm a collaborator. I am a researcher and a digger. And I understand technical concepts very well. I can learn, and I have learned and learned. And that is what we are as a community. We are learners. We love to learn. And that is integral to doing InfoSec, because we constantly have to be upping our game. We can't stop learning. And we bring that passion. That's something you can't teach people. So we need to bring people in who are willing to learn, passionate, and able to demonstrate that commitment. Did you get to see the keynote here, the panel keynote on Friday?
I did not. I was here helping out, volunteering in the Wellness Village. So what was that one on?
That was really good because they talked about mentoring, mentees, learning, showing your willingness to grow, and how when we bring people in, if they can show that they are willing and able to be here, demonstrate what they have learned and ready to dive into more, that's who we want to bring in here. It is not a 9-to-5 job. It is not a paycheck. It is here for a very specific set of reasons because we want to be here and do this.
Okay. So, I've used the analogy before, and we're going to go back to what you were talking about before. Like you have a specific set of skills yourself, like researching and understanding and analysis and stuff. Yeah. Mark Twain used to be a riverboat captain, and he knew his stretch of the river. And after that, they would hand it off to another riverboat captain. So you know your stretch of the river, and you help bridge the gap between other parts of the river, which is a very apt analogy for many of us in the industry. You know, we all know pen testing, or we all know reverse engineering. Yeah. We all know PCI and governance, and threat hunting leads to, and all this stuff builds on one another, to get down the river, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
that's a great analogy, actually.
Yeah. So what other talks did you see at Derby?
Oh, I saw a great one. Ian Coldwater did a talk on securing Kubernetes.
I wanted to see that
Oh.
one. Yeah, there was a lot of shoulds. So what I'm hoping is I can get Ian on the show to talk about securing containers.
I gotta say, this was my chance to learn fundamentals about containers and security. She does a really good explanation of it. And the takeaways for me were not just that Kubernetes is everywhere and it is, quote unquote, the new hotness, but the similarities we're seeing in terms of insecurity by misconfiguration.
Right.
We are seeing so many misconfiguration issues. MongoDB, case in point, right? So there's these databases that are sitting up there that shouldn't be exposed, that are wide open for the taking, and you can go hunting for them on Shodan. Well, if you're looking at Kubernetes,
right,
because it's that much more complicated, it's, again, left at default settings that are great for the pickings.
Right.
And there are some things we could just be doing, basics, that will lock it down so much better. And that was a really great message that came out.
We do. Okay, so in network infrastructure, we have a default deny option in our firewalls, and that's considered de rigueur, And then we go to something like Kubernetes where it's all open. And I'm like, why aren't we doing the same thing in all the technologies? Default deny, you must allow specific things. And it just seems like that we're not doing it right. Now, we got it right with firewalls finally. Mm-hmm. We're just not doing it with the rest of the stuff. So, our infrastructure looks a lot like an egg or, pineapple. Once you get inside, it's all gooey and icky. Well, on the outside, it's really hard,
That's a good analogy, too. I don't know, because it would be so much simpler if we shipped things all locked down and then you went in and specified what you wanted to have open. But I think it has to be a business driver in there saying, no, we have to use this and we have to be able to hit the ground running. And
right.
From a convenience standpoint, and convenience comes up so often in terms of why are we insecure? Because we want to be able to do this, because we want to have this super faster, better.
Right. Well, it doesn't take much to open a port. It doesn't take much to close one. It's actually harder to close one because that requires people to have the no factor. But if you have the default no, and then you're like opening things up, it just seems like it would be a lot easier in the long run.
Well, I love that thought, because then you have to think about it before you open it.
Right.
Yeah. We talk about one of our key concepts for security is limited access, right? Only on a need-to-know basis. If we were doing that all the way through, we would be wonderfully secure.
Yeah, don't open it because you have to. Open it because don't open it because you want to, because you have to.
Yes. Yeah,
that makes more sense. So you saw Ian Coldwater. Was there any others that were very interesting that I'm going to have to check out on Iron Geek's website?
Oh my gosh, I saw. There was a good talk last night about. It was a panel discussion with some of our great people who often volunteer. So, I'm thinking like Totenkopf and Cinders and Ashes, and yes, I'm Kathleen, and what it means to be a volunteer within our community, how you can use the strengths of your volunteering experience to leverage yourself into a really good career. Are you showing what you're doing on your resume? And I wanted to attend because being involved with organizations and volunteering, it was good to show my support, first of all, and have a better understanding. And then I'm going to take that back to the people, say, at the Diana Initiative and, work with them further and appreciate who's working with us and our volunteers and remind them of that. I went to a really interesting talk at one. It was a story by a man who has worked in payment systems.
Sure.
And fraud. So for anybody who's in banking, these are huge issues. It's ongoing. And he talked about what it was like to try and build a payment system without the proper resources, therefore not understanding security and being the constant target of organized crime. Now, organized crime, they are set up to do this right from the get-go, and they are relentless. They're going to find their way in all the time. You're going to be bleeding money if you are not vigilant And the your security is not able to keep up with they're poking pretty much. They're looking for any opportunity.
He didn't mention blockchain at all during that talk at all.
There was no blockchain mentioned.
Oh God. Oh, that's so awesome. I need to find that one. Yeah.
Blockchain was not the solution that was presented.
Sweet. Okay. Excellent.
So it was a really good learning exercise. He laid out what their pain points were, what they had done wrong. He had statistics to show what the percentages were and the costs, and then how they came back to it to build something. What they looked at their mistakes, they didn't have much to work with, and so they took a very fundamental, rudimentary approach. It has to have 3 areas that they addressed. One of them being, limiting access management, stuff we understand that are fundamentals in security. So it was very interesting.
And you work in the financial space, so that means a lot to you. Yeah,
that hit home.
Cool.
Yeah, there were
Very
some good
nice.
lessons for me to bring.
Cool. So let's go back a little bit. You mentioned the Diana Initiative. Was it the Diana Initiative last year as well? Or
Yes, that was our first year last year.
Okay, so
this
second
was our second year.
Right
yeah.
on. Yep.
Yeah.
How did that change between the first year and the second year with regards to doing it at Vegas and expanding?
It was huge this year. We had so many more people. We had a wonderful turnout. We had 2 speaker tracks.
Wow.
We were told, let us show what we know. So we encouraged it. We had a technical and a non-technical track. We had 4 wonderful keynote presentations. They were just amazing to learn from. And we had a soldering village.
Oh, nice.
And we had the lockpick village back again. We had a violent Python class.
Okay.
Yeah, and everybody wanted to do all of these things and more. So our mission next year is to have a bigger space so that we can make sure that everybody who wants to attend can attend. I've got to say a huge heartfelt thank you to our volunteers, because we could not have done this without you, and to the team I'm part of.
Right.
And so grateful to get to work with these people who just put their heart and souls into it.
Right on. So the Lockpick Village was separate from the DEF CON and all those? Was it a separate?
We were a separate suite, yes.
Right
So you
on.
didn't have to have the DEF CON pass. It was, because for a lot of people, they don't have that almost $300 American to come up with to be able to get in. This was more of it was an oasis away from it for some people, and it was an opportunity to go to a conference right there, be part of it, connect with people on a more intimate level.
Is there any chance that you'll separate that from Hacker Summer Camp and it will be something other than, be something greater than just being a sub-con of Hacker Summer Camp?
We like being there adjacent, but we may have a slightly different space because we're looking now. We'll need something much bigger.
Caesar's, I heard, is open. You could probably, get, or maybe the Bellagio. I'm sure they've got some meeting spaces.
Well, I'm rather, yeah. Now I'm thinking, I'd love to go back to the Tuscany.
Right. Oh, yeah.
But we're thinking we would like to find a way. Maybe we can partner with other cons during the year. Maybe we can do this as not just a once a year event, but find a way to increase it as in terms of the whole concept being an initiative and continuing to help people develop and grow their learning and their careers.
We'll probably have you on at some point in the future to talk more about your actual talks than just, a quick snippet of those. So I definitely want to have you on to discuss the patching and stuff like that. So, Cheryl, how would people find you if they wanted to talk about Diana Initiative or your talks or anything?
Okay, well, I live on Twitter, so you can look for me as Encrypted. That would be Leet Speak, so it's 3NCR1PT3D. And there I have my website. I have a blog space /website, so you can take a look at stuff that I'm sharing. And I hope to put some talks again up there and update it. But it's a resource for people.
Okay. Were the Diana Initiative talks recorded this year?
Not this year. So the presenters have individually shared what they have. But what we will do is, I think we'll do on our Diana Initiative site, and you can just look that up. We have who the presenters were, and we'll update what they have to share.
Phenomenal. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for
Have a good
having
one.
me.
Yep, no problem.